Okay, welcome to part 2. So in this section, I'm just going to talk about off-planar joints. So often when you're rigging a character, your joints aren't going to be perfectly aligned. Your model joints aren't going to be perfectly aligned, especially if you're using with an A pose or something like that. So what I'm going to do is just drop this guy to something like this. So the problem here is that even though, well, first of all, my x-axis is in the line, so let's fix that first. So skeleton, orient joint. I'm going to reset it and say boom. Okay, cool. So my x-axis is correct here. My x-axis is correct here. The last one is not, so I'll set it to none and fix that, right? So, but what I do want is I want this z-axis pointing straight back up at its parent. Now what you remember is when you do orient to world, it's going to orient it so it's aiming at its world space. So when you parent it, that world space becomes its parent because that's its world. That's what it knows. So the offset is the parent space, the child space. The parents, the one without a parent, its world space is world that we know of in generic, my universe. Whereas this parent, the parent of this guy's world, whatever, parent world, same thing. Sorry. So anyway, so what I want to do is I want to maintain that x-axis. So primary axis is going to be x. And then my secondary axis, I actually want it aiming back up at the original. So I'm going to set that to none because just like before, if you remember, I was using joint-e-oj none, and none would set our axis to, I'll freeze this. It's obviously wrong. If I do a joint-e-oj, orient joint none, it aims it up at its axis. So to get this guy to aim down the x-axis and have its secondary axis be aiming at world, I'm going to set that to none. I'm actually not going to reorient the children. Local scale axis, yeah, I want that. I'll hit that. And what you'll see now is that my axis is actually aiming directly at the parent is what I want. I'm going to undo that to show you what's wrong in the first place. So if I wanted to get this guy so that, if say this is an elbow, you don't want to be animating in multiple axes to get that, right? That's not correct. And if I aren't, this is not correct either if I just do it in Y. 90% of the time, now this is a thing where, you're an animator, so you can do whatever you want. But often you want that axis to be planar, which means if I draw a plane through here, it's perfectly flat. So that when I rotate in Y, I'm going to go directly up into that shoulder there. So by setting that to none, remember that's its parent, none, world, all equals none. I know that that's weird, but that seems to be what it is. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and hit apply, and now I've got that aiming the way I want, almost. So you'll notice that I have Y up here, I have Y is now aiming this way. Actually, you know what, if I set to the Z, no, that's not correct. I'll say none again. Okay, so none is what I want to get that axis aimed, but I want it to be my Z axis and not my Y axis because I want my Y's all to be upwards. So again, we'll go back to the component editor, all components off, hit the question mark. Now I can select it. I'm going to hold down J for snapping, snap, 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 and just do a quick look. And if I look at my axes in here, I see I do indeed have a 90 on there. If I undo that, you'll see it's 0. If I redo it, you'll see I have a 90. Right, I'll do it again. E, holding down J for snapping. Snap, snap, snap. And now it's aligned with what I want it to be. And just to get rid of that, now this is one of those things where maybe there's a tool somewhere, I don't know it. But what I'm going to do to get rid of it is run that E joint-E-ZSO. I forget what ZSO stands for. Actually, I probably never learned what it stood for, to be honest. If I go to help here, I'll bring it over. Whoops. Let's find ZSO. Zero scale orient. It sets the scale orientation to 0 and compensate the change by modifying the translation and joint orientation for joint or rotation for general transform with halls, children, blah, 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 blah. Basically, what it means to me is that my translation of when I'm in object mode matches my local, my joint orient, right? And that way now when I rotate that, it goes exactly where I want to. Just to make sure that you see that this is now off, I want that to match as well. Again, this is like a 90% thing. Most of the time I'm going to want that. I'll set to world, hit the button, now it matches. Cool. So I'm going to have to backtrack a little bit, but I'll show you why this is important really quick. So if I just put an IK handle on here, I'm going to use a rotate plane solver. And now when I move this, let's see if I can do it smartly. You see that it's bending. Hopefully you can see that. Maybe I need to change the color here. Joints. No. That's not great either. How about blue? Purple? Purple's not bad. Okay, cool. So now when I move that, you see it's actually rotating always on that perfect y-axis. I'm not getting anything funky. If I hit T, this is where my pole vector is, and it's going to maintain that 2D planar location. So let's undo this a bunch of times until we get our axis off again. Good, our axis is off. Now, if I go ahead and put a IK handle on there, it sort of looks right? But then when I bend it, look what's happening. That is wonky, weird, nobody wants it. So what's happening, actually, if I do, let's try something here. Give me a time slider, grab that, we'll key it, and I'll move it in what seems to make sense, and I'll key it. Now, strangely, it seems to be doing what it's supposed to do, but it's totally wrong. There we go. So you see I'm getting double axes, right? I'm getting rotate Y and rotate Z to get that final result, which is not what I want. I want to have just a single axis rotation. I'll undo a few times, and then I'll delete this. I'll grab that elbow again. I'll go to skeleton, orient joint. X-axis, yes. Secondary axis doesn't matter because I'm going to have to fix it and apply. When you get that, it's usually just because there's somewhere in there. Yeah, see, I got some weird axes on here. It shouldn't matter, but it sees them. It's math. It's floating point precision. There we go. That's correct. This time I'm going to cheat. And CSO it. And this guy orient it just because I like to have it matching. And now when I put that IK handle on there, bling, ding, and let's key it real quick. Hey, let's key it real quick. Go up there like that. Right, and now hopefully this worked. I'm going to grab that elbow, and when I rotate this, you see I get it rotating in just rotate Y, which is what I want. That way it's going to make sure that when I match things, I'm getting clean rotations. I'm getting clean rotations if I have a pose space deformation on there. I'm not getting multiple rotations in there, and that's basically what I want. So I'm going to stop this here, but I hope that's helpful, and I'll see who's messaging me.